All right, welcome everyone. It is February 26th. We are already at the end of February. Time flies. Seems like it was just New Year's yesterday. But here we are today to talk about ways that you can save for your student. And also, we're going to be doing a quick walkthrough of the CSS profile, some important parts of it so that you guys can make the most of your situation. Okay. Again, I see people coming in right now. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze real quick, I think. Excuse me. If you can put your grade in the chat, it'll help me a lot to understand who's coming to our trainings and how to cater the information. Okay, so let us get started. Okay, so just like real quick things, right? So we are going to talk about kind of ways to help yourself. We're going to talk about kind of ways to save that are going to be that are going to kind of help you in the long run. And we're also going to talk about the CSS profile today. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat so I can answer them for you, right? And then if you want the replay because you want to kind of go over the training and make sure that you understand everything that I'm saying, it will be available either on our Facebook page or in our YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours. If you're in our Facebook group and coming from there, please go ahead and we're gonna have a post. Just say that you want the replay, and then we will go ahead and our team will get it over to you. Okay. So just a little bit about me, Coach David. I've been working in college admissions and financial aid for the last decade and a half, plus 1 year. So I just realized it's plus 1 year now because the new year went over, right? So it's my 16th year working in college admissions and in financial aid. Okay, I am a former attorney, right? And I have been working with families to make sure that they can reach their college goals and also their financial goals when it comes to college expenses. Okay, and I wish that these trainings and also our program will be a benefit to you guys so that you guys can save money. So let's talk a little bit about, and I think some people actually just come for the breaking news part because they want to see what's going on with financial aid. But I have some better news this week, right? So here is one of the pieces of news that is changing, right? So one of the things that has kind of changed for this year with all the kind of shakeups with the U.S. Department of Education and financial aid and all these things and so on and so forth. And also, as I was reading, what I found was that there are less and less California families that are signing up for financial aid or the FAFSA or the CSS profile. What has happened is that a lot of people, I think, are getting into that mode of our family makes a little too much money. We own a house, right? We do this, we do that, so on and so forth. There's too many reasons, and a lot of families are disqualifying themselves, right? And so in order to kind of stem that, also there was obviously the Southern California wildfires that affected a lot of families, right? They are extending the financial aid deadline to April 2nd. So that gives families another month to get things in line and get things turned in. Okay. Now, another thing that I did share last week, and I did want to share again, because again, some families come to our trainings 1 week and not another week, right? This is the exact same page that is on the FAFSA. The one on the right is from about 3, 4 weeks ago. The one on the left is from last week, right? Basically, what has happened is that, the Trump administration has, you know, made a kind of, executive directive, right? And basically said that there's only two genders now, right? So they have male and female on the left, and on the right, what it used to be was male, female, non-binary, and prefer not to answer. Unfortunately, those choices are now gone. If your student does this identify as one of those categories, we'll have to talk about how we need to proceed here. Okay, so some changes there. Okay, now another piece of better news is that the CSUs are now so the UCs used to have something called a blue and gold guarantee, right? Or blue and gold kind of scholarship, right? Now the CSUs have gotten on board as well, and Cal Poly Humboldt has joined CSU Fresno in providing the green and gold guarantee program. Basically, what this is it is going to fill the gap between kind of the cost of attendance and your financial aid so that students do not really have to go into debt in order to go to college. Okay, so the green and gold guarantee available at Cal Poly Humboldt and CSU Fresno, right? If those are schools that you were already looking towards, right, then that's great. If not, right, maybe they are schools that you start looking into. Okay. Now, another piece, okay, I've been going like good news, bad news, good news, bad news. So this is another piece of bad news, okay? Now, for lower income families, the Pell Grant has been something that they have relied on for decades, right? To basically pay for kind of additional expenses for college. This year, the first time in decades, is the first time that the Pell Grant will be in a budget deficit, right? There will be a $2.7 billion deficit because there have been cuts that have been made to the Department of Education, right? Now, it's not 100% sure that they are going to be in a deficit, but from what I've read, there is a high likelihood that they will be in deficit. Now, what that means is that the Pell Grant may be lowered, right? Now, what I mean by that is that, like, let's say that you were originally getting $7,000 through the Pell Grant. That might now be 5,000 or 4,500, right? But the reason why this is important for financial aid is because 30% of American college students depend on the Pell Grant to go to college, okay? So it's not just the kind of like the budgetary things and things like that. Yes, money was cut from the budget, but that usually doesn't result in a $2.7 billion deficit. What did happen was that they changed the formula to kind of see who qualifies for the Pell Grant, right? And because of that, one of the things that happened was that there was a 12.6% increase in the number of families, right, that can get the Pell Grant, right? Now, what did that do? Well, there's a 12.6% increase, right? That $2.7 billion deficit might be from that increase of 12.6% of families that can get aid, right? There are millions and millions of families that are applying for financial aid every single year across the nation, right? So it's hard to say that this is just a kind of current administration problem, right? Overall, the government should have done some math. They knew what the previous data was. In the next year, they could have kind of extrapolated and said, this is how many more people we're going to have to give money to. How much is that, right? They didn't do the math, and now we're in this problem, right? I think they were looking for a little bit of good PR last year, right? So they're like, oh, we're increasing the availability of the Pell Grant, right? But they didn't really look into how much that would actually cost them, which I think is behind this deficit, okay? So just some pieces of information. Now, stay tuned. I always say stay tuned because, again, there's so many things going on right now. I'm going to try to bring the most comprehensive and like the new headlines to you guys so that you can have the most up-to-date information. Now, if you have any question about the things that you're seeing here today, make sure to kind of reach out to me so that we can talk. Okay. But now let's get into the training. Okay. Now, here is my kind of warning. I'm not going to kind of like, yell at you guys as we go through this training, but here's my first thing. If you're here and you're kind of like, well, we make too much anyway, right? Like, oh, I heard that, my family's not going to be eligible, right? Oh, I own a home. Oh, I have a rental property, right? Oh, I saved for college, so I don't need any help, right? If these are some of the things that you're saying to yourself as you're watching this, right? Well, then my first question is, why are you here, right? And then the second question is, if someone's going to give you a discount, do you ever say no, right? If you're going to buy a new car and they say, yeah, we'll give you 15% off, are you like, no, 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 I want to pay full price? I don't think there's anyone out there that will ever do that, right? There's too many different reasons why people, again, and I showed you from that link, right? It said that less and less Californians are applying for financial aid, right? Because they are in their mind disqualifying themselves. There's a lot of different reasons why people disqualify themselves, right? But again, make sure to stick around to the end to sign up for a consultation so that we can talk, figure out your situation. Okay. Now, before we get into our training, a quick word from our sponsor, right? For families that are in our kind of, coaching programs, right? You guys already know about this, right? But for those that don't, right? I am part of egelloC, right? Now, egelloC is our parent company, right? Financial Aid Secrets is a part of that company, right? Now, egelloC is our college coaching program, right? If you actually look at the word, right, you might be like, what kind of weird word is that? Why is the capital on the right? Like, what's going on here, right? But if you actually just flip it around, egelloC spelled backwards is actually just college, right? So just like how we have made a kind of name that we help you crack the code to, right? We want to make sure that we help you crack the code to getting into college, right? Now, Financial Aid Secrets is here to give you the keys to a little bit more of financial freedom when it comes to college expenses, right? College is getting more and more expensive every single year, right? But like I always say, one of the things that we have to remember is that paying for college is obviously a step along the journey, but we have to get in first, right? So I do want to introduce our college application intensive. Our college app intensive is a kind of two-part kind of spring, summer event, right? That is going to help your student get from their starting point for their essays all the way to their final draft, okay? The Kickstart is where we start. It's a one-day event on the weekend, right? It will help your student kind of get their ideas into a rough draft state, right? And then the accelerator, which is further down the line, right? Either kind of like earlier in the summer or later in the summer, or even in the early fall, right? Is going to be a time where we bring your rough drafts and kind of drafts you've been working on to final kind of submission ready drafts. Okay. If you are interested in this, please go ahead. I will have a link at the end of our consult or our training today, right? You can also go to collegeappintensive.com to get more information about that. Okay. But let's go back to our training now, and we're going to talk about saving for younger students. Okay. Now, these strategies are not going to work for everyone. Okay. So I'm not saying that everyone can do these, but they are possibilities, right? Each situation is very unique. So that's why I suggest that everyone talks to us to understand their specific situation. Okay. So saving, okay, just in general saving money is good, right? But there are certain ways to save money, right, that are better than others, okay? So just throwing money into your savings account is not always the best method, right? But it's better than nothing, right? But I'm going to try to kind of introduce some different ways, right, before we talk about the CSS profile, which is another important part of the financial aid process. Okay. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is changing your income. Okay. Now, a lot of people are like, well, my income is my income. I can't really do anything about it. I work for, this place or that place, so on and so forth. My income is $100,000, $200,000 a year. That's what it is, right? But there's a lot of different ways that you can reduce your income in the baseline year, right? Now, for those that are coming here for the first time, because I do see a few new names, right? The baseline year is the year that is 2 years before the year your student is going to graduate. Okay. So if your student is like our next kind of graduating class is going to be, the 2026, right? They're going to be the new seniors that are coming up, right? If that is the class year that your student is, then we're going to go 2 years back, right? And our tax return that we're going to use is the 2024 tax year. If your student's a class of 2027, 2025 tax year, right? So on and so forth, right? But in that baseline tax year, there's a lot of things that you can do to lower your income. You might take an unpaid leave of absence, right? Maybe you want to take that month vacation, right? There's also ways to lower kind of your income by taking, a capital loss by selling off bad investments, right? Those penny stocks that you thought were really going to pay off that are now worth, a fraction of a penny, right? Postponing bonuses, right? Anytime you can push something off, that is a great thing to be able to do, right? You want to try to max out your contributions to your retirement funds because retirement funds, for the purposes of FAFSA, are considered like non-reportable assets, right? So the more you put in there, the lower your income is like overall for that baseline year, right? Now, if you own a business, right, you might think about cutting down the salaries of kind of like your family members or yourself during that baseline year, right? Now, a lot of people are like, oh, I have a business, I can do that, right? But unfortunately, it's only for a certain type of business, only if you have a C Corp, okay? If you have an S Corp or an LLC or a sole proprietorship, unfortunately, right, at least in California, all those different business entity types are pass-through entities, which means that you will be taxed on them. It is only when you have a C Corp that you won't have kind of any of your kind of business things on your personal tax return. Okay. So that's kind of one way to kind of think about kind of saving money for college is to go ahead and kind of change your income, right? Now, other ways to save, right? I talk about 529s all the time, right? Now, 529s, they are a reportable asset if they are held by the parent for the benefit of the student. But there is a loophole here that I do want to let families know about. Okay. If a grandparent holds it, or if someone else holds a 529, right, for the benefit of your student, it is not a reportable asset for the purposes of financial aid. So it will not affect your financial aid, right? Use this as much as you can if you can. Okay. Now, I I kind of talked about this last week too, but there might be families that have grandparents that live in different areas, right? In California, you need to be a or not necessarily a California resident, but you need to be a US citizen in order to hold a 529 for a student, right? So it's not necessarily going to work, but other states have other requirements. Check in with your local financial advisor. Okay. But 529s, they're not a great investment tool. Let's be completely honest, right? Families that have a 529, if you started 20 years ago, it's probably grown a little bit, right? But if you started last year, I think the average growth rate for a 529 over the past 3 decades, or basically 2 decades, right, has been about 3% a year. It's not even beating the market, right? So if that's the case, right, there might be other opportunities elsewhere where more money can be saved, right, or invested and made. Okay. Now, again, like I said, another person can kind of, hold that 529 as well, right? But there are technicalities, right? So every year, if you're going to be paying for things or so on and so forth, you need to make sure that the timing works out right. So if you have a godfather, right, that has a 529 in your name, right, you need to make sure that you fill out the FAFSA before you receive any money, and you need to make sure that all that money is gone before you file your next FAFSA, right? Or else it will be counted as untaxed income. Okay, so make sure that you are planning those things out so that you don't run into any issues on your FAFSA form. Okay. Now, so those are some of the ways that you can go ahead and think about saving, right? There's income changes, there's 529s, right? Now, a lot of people say, well, can I just throw it into my savings account? The reason why I don't like savings accounts is because the savings account is a very traditional type of account. And a lot of colleges have figured out how to extrapolate from the data on your tax return how much you have sitting in your savings account. Okay. So very simply, right? Let's say that, you had $100,000 in your savings account, right? On that, right, usually savings account have an interest rate. Let's just call it 1% for ease, right? That means that you would make $1,000 in interest at the end of the year, right? If you kept that $100,000 in there for the full year, right? So what happens, right? Well, on your tax return, it said you're going to get a little slip from the bank that says, tax paperwork, right? And when you take it to your CPA, they're going to put it under the line of taxable income and they're going to be able to see that, right? Now, when a college sees that you had $1,000 in taxable interest, right, they're going to automatically think that you had a savings account. What happens then is that, well, they go back, right, and they recalculate. Okay, they'll reverse calculate things and be like, they have $100,000 in cash just sitting in their bank in their savings account. Now, you might have had that in there because like you guys were buying a home and now that money's gone, but to them, right, it doesn't matter, right? They think that you have $100,000 or 200, 300, whatever the number is, right, in your savings account. So a lot of the times, the savings account isn't the best place to have money sitting. Okay. So with that, I do want to make sure that we go into the CSS profile because there's a lot of pieces here that are very critical for our families, right? I see ninth graders. I even see eighth graders, right? I see basically everyone, 9th, 10th, 11th right now, okay, in the chat, right? So I want to make sure that families understand what the CSS profile is and the different ways that kind of it can mess with you, okay? So the first thing that I wanted to do is kind of explain what the CSS is, right? So if you actually look, right, I put the kind of terms of service, like the first page. Once you log into your kind of CSS profile, this is the first page that you get. You will see that it is run by the College Board. Yes, you are not mistaken. College Board is the place where you sign up for your SATs and your AP exams. Okay. The College Board runs the CSS profile and also an additional piece of the puzzle called iDoc, which I'll explain later on in a different training. Okay. So they are the owners of this CSS profile, right? So when you go into it, it's going to ask you to agree to these terms. I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me recently asking, should I agree to this? And I'm like, you don't have a choice, right? You need to agree to it to move on to the next level, right? So like they have a lot of different terms, right? I just took one screenshot, but basically there's like 12 or 15 different terms and conditions you have to agree to in order to get to the next page. But here's the problem. If you don't agree to it, you cannot get to the next page, right? So like don't kind of like go through the agony of reading over all these things. You have to go to the next page, right? So don't worry about it too much, right? We'll have to figure it out after this. Okay. Now, I wanted to walk through some of the pieces of the puzzle just so that you guys understand kind of what they're looking for. Okay. So one of the pieces that they're going to be looking for is the student information. Okay. Now, I will not tell you how many times I have had families reach out to me and say, oh my God, we didn't get any financial aid. Can you help us? And I'm like, yeah, let me take a look. And the first thing that I see when I go into their CSS profile is that the student's name is spelled wrong. Okay. You need to make sure you're spelling your name correctly. Okay. So the reason why I'm kind of saying this so forcefully is because I've seen it way too much. Okay. So go ahead and do that. If you have a nickname or preferred name, go ahead and put that, right? And you also need to make sure that you're checking your inputted birthdays and social security numbers. Okay. The reason why I say this again is because everyone has been so used to their telephone keypad. Okay. Now your telephone keypad and your kind of keypad for the numbers on your computer are actually backwards. Okay. So you need to make sure that you're typing in the right number as you do it. Okay. Same thing with your birthday. Okay. Now, parent information. Okay. This is one of the parts that I did want to make sure that we went over. Okay. We need to be very careful here. About a month and a half ago, I told you about a class action lawsuit that has been filed by kind of students from the past, I don't know, 2, 3 decades, right? And also against the College Board and multiple, elite institutions, about 40. Okay. Now, the whole problem came about because, right, whether a family, the parents in a family were divorced or separated or this or that, or like they weren't in the like one parent wasn't in the picture, right? They would ask for both parents' information and both parents' kind of financial information, right? But what if a family is divorced, right? One parent has custody and there is no financial support from the other kind of parent, right? Well, they would still ask for the other parent's financial information even if they were not going to contribute, right? So if you are in a situation where the parents are separated or divorced or widowed, right? Never married, right? But living together, or never married but not living together, right? This is a question that you need to answer very carefully so that it doesn't negatively impact your financial aid situation. Okay. So if you are in that situation, right, you should probably talk to me because I can give you the lowdown on exactly what needs to happen in each situation, right? But right, if this doesn't pertain to you, then yeah, you would put both mom and dad in there. Okay. Now, when it comes to college choices, this is another section that is a little bit different than the FAFSA that we went over about 2 weeks ago, right? Unlike the FAFSA, there is no limit to the number of colleges that you can turn in at one time, right? But, right, there is one piece that is kind of like foundational, right? At kind of like, and this is like even before you turn in your kind of CSS profile to the various schools that you're applying to, right? So the first thing is that you do need to make sure that you are picking the right college, right? So for instance, like if you just type in Stanford and you choose the first one on the list, you will have chosen the wrong one, right? Because Stanford, right, has like 4 or 5 different categories of things where you could turn in your form. Columbia has like 3 or 4 different ones, right? So you need to make sure that you're choosing the right one. If you ever have any doubt, you want to go to that school's website, type in CSS profile code, right? And you will be able to find it on their website, and then you should apply to that one. Okay. But the other foundational piece that is very important here is this. Okay. Now, once you choose, like, and I chose Stanford here just randomly, once you choose the college that you are going to, this is how you need to answer the questions, right? So if you are a, senior, you're going to be a senior next year, right? Then you're going to put in first year undergraduate student. And the question of what are your housing plans? I don't care if you're living with grandma. I don't care if you're living at your parents' house. I don't care if you're living with your friend off campus. You need to choose on campus every single time. Okay. And the reasoning that is why we need to do that is on the left, right? So living and eating on campus is the highest cost that you could choose, right? The dorms and the meal plans are the most expensive way to live while you're in college, right? So we don't want to say, I want you to give more money to me, but I'm going to be living off campus, right? Instead, you should say, I'm going to be living in the most expensive accommodations, and so you need to give me more money. That's what needs to happen, okay? So when you're choosing the housing plans, make sure that you're choosing on campus. Now, this one, regular decision, early action, early decision, that depends on how you applied, okay? Now, housing situation, okay? One of the things that a lot of people get stuck in, especially California families, and especially if you own your own home, right, is this section on the housing, right? Now, I so when I was first filling this out, I put in my real birthday, and so they're asking about mine, but usually they'll ask about the parents, right? So they're going to ask about the home purchase year, okay? So you can put that honestly. The home purchase price, go ahead, put that honestly, right? The current market value. This is the question that screws up a lot of families. Now, a lot of families are really proud to put this in because it's like, oh, well, our house price went up a lot, right? But why would you want to show that to the college admissions officers that are trying to give you free money, right? You do not want to show that. The current market value that you should be using on your home is the amount that you pay property taxes on. Okay. Now, if you do not own your home, this question will not pop up, right? If you say that you're renting, this question will not pop up. Okay. And then the total amount owed on your home, again, hopefully you have a mortgage. Having a mortgage is a nice thing because it shows that you don't fully own this thing yet, right? And then you'll answer your question about the housing payment. But, right, the higher amount that you owe, right, the higher your payment, right? That if your payment's higher, that means that it's taking more away from your income that you can use, right? Your discretionary income. So just some pieces to think about as you're going through the CSS. Okay. Now, parent financial information, right? Now, if you didn't hear anything else today, this is the piece that you do want to hear, right? This is the biggest tip I am ever going to give during the course of all of my trainings ever, probably, right? In the parent information section, there are only 5 questions that are required. That's it. So other than like your personal information, your name, your birthday, your social security number, other than that, asking about your taxes, there's only 5 questions. They ask you about your wages. They ask you about, your the taxes that you paid. They ask if you were a kind of like a former veteran, right? And then there's a couple others, but there's literally only 5 questions that they ask you that are required to answer. Everything else is optional. Do you have a retirement account? Optional, right? Tell us where you work. Optional, right? How much interest did you make? Optional, right? So why give them more information? There's no reason to, right? So I don't want you to just blindly start filling in numbers and be like, yeah, I've lived a really good life. I've saved up. Here's all my information. That's not what this kind of like financial aid strategy game, this chess game is about. It's about giving them the least amount of information and getting money from those schools. Okay. So for those that are maybe, I probably do have some senior families in here, right? But for those families that are filling out the CSS and kind of working on those pieces, don't fill it out, right? There's no point, right? Why are you giving them extra kind of like ammunition to say no to you? Okay, so please, please, please make sure you take a screenshot of this page. Okay. All right. Other things, right? It also asks about student resources, right? So it says like, oh, how much are you going to earn right now? Me, poor little old Coach David, right? I'm making nothing in the summer of 2005, right? I'm making nothing in the school year of 25, 26, right? So if your student, again, I'm not saying that they are not going to work. They might pick up a part-time job here or there, right? So on and so forth. But if there's nothing planned out, like, oh yeah, this person's going to be making $27,000 a year doing this job part-time, 20 hours a week for this and this and that. They're just asking about expected. Again, we want to give them the lowest figures possible. So put 0, right? Okay. Now, as far as student resources, right? They also ask, how much does the student think that they're going to get from their parents, right? From scholarships or grants, employers, other relatives, right? But here's the thing, right? For the purposes of the CSS profile, I want the parents to be wicked, right? We're going to be mean parents, uncles, aunts, and grandparents, right? We're not going to give anything to our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, right? Absolutely nothing, right? Because that is when our need goes up, right? So I know that it might not necessarily be the case, right? But in your mind, if you say, oh, it's 0, then go ahead and put 0 here. Again, wink, wink. Okay. So read between the lines here. Okay. Now, takeaways. Okay. I want to be very clear, right? This form is here to try to get you to volunteer information so that the financial aid offices can beep you over. Okay. Don't let them answer the basics and then let's find a way around the questions, right? If they ask for additional information later on, we can deal with that later on, right? The CSS is definitely more than what I just showed here, right? I just showed you a little bit, like I showed you snippets throughout so that you can get a taste for it, right? This was probably about, I'd probably say 15% of the form, okay? Now, before you turn in anything, if you have questions, please make sure that you talk with me about your situation if you're unsure about anything, right? Once you click that submit button, there's not much I can do to go back and take things away, right? So before you click that submit button, make sure that you're talking to us, okay? So again, how can we help, right? I am available by every means necessary. Text, email, Discord, Facebook Messenger, right? Leave a comment, whatever, right? Make sure that you guys are reaching out so that we can talk real quickly, right? We also have a Q&A at the end of this presentation as well, so you can ask your questions there, right? But please do not turn things in, right? Take a breather before you turn anything in, right? And make sure to talk to us before you do, right? If you're in like a little bit of a time crunch, make sure to reach out to me kind of via email, right? So that I can make sure to kind of set something up for you quicker, right? I'm always amenable to kind of making those things happen for our families. Okay. So I do want to make sure that you guys can get more information if you need it, right? So if you are interested in hearing more about our financial aid edge program, you can go ahead, use that QR code. You can also text money to 949-298-6234 so that we can get you more information, get you signed up for a consultation. Okay. If you're interested in our college application intensive or in our coaching programs, you can text college to 949-298-6234, or you can use that QR code there. So I've given you kind of many different ways to kind of get on that, right? I just want to make sure that these QR codes work. Okay, so let's take a quick look here. Why it's not working for me? Oh, it does. Okay, so those links do work, right? So again, any way that you can get in touch with us, definitely do that so that we can make sure that we are helping you. Okay. Now, one of the things that I did last week is that I said for families that are kind of like younger grades, I want to make sure that you guys are getting signed up early because our program cost keeps going up, just like how the price of gas keeps going up and the price of potatoes and oh my, like OMG, the price of eggs, right, is skyrocketing, right? Everything in the world's price is going up, right? If you have a 10th grader or a 9th grader or an 8th grader, right, and I talk to you and it makes sense, you should hop on board now because in 3, 4, 5 years, I cannot tell you what the cost of our program will be at that time. Okay. So again, make sure to kind of sign up for that consultation. Okay. And as an added bonus, right, for anyone that kind of comes to our consultation, and as soon as we start, right, or kind of in your form, if you go ahead and put the word like March, right, because we're headed into March, right, I will go ahead and give you an extra 10% discount off of your financial aid edge package. Okay. So go ahead and let's see. We have a bunch of questions, right? So let's go ahead and answer those, right? So we have a question here that says we're a middle school family enrolled in the egelloC program, but I'm curious when we should reach out to you. Okay, so basically the question is, we have a family that is in our coaching program, right? Their student is a younger student, still in middle school right now. All right. And so because of that, they're not exactly sure when they should come and talk to me. I will tell you this, my youngest student is in 4th grade, right? I actually had a consultation and with someone that had a 3rd grader, right? So it's never too early to sign up. And I always think that it is better to sign up early because again, you get the added benefit of paying a lower price for our program, right? And so you should go ahead and sign up for that program. And I understand that your income might change and things like that, but we can talk about the kind of the different possibilities, and then I can also tell you about the possibilities of what our program could do for you inside those different possibilities that your family might be in. So we have that. Now we always have our money back guarantee, right? And so our money back guarantee is there to protect families. So if we're in a position where we're not able to help you anymore because I don't know, maybe your income skyrocketed, right? Then we will just give you a refund, right? We can still try, right? It all depends on kind of the situation, but that is something for us to kind of talk about during our consultation. So please make sure to sign up for that. Okay. Just to make it a little easy, I will also put the link into the chat here so that you guys can sign up for that. Okay. Now we have another question that says, when should we start the FAFSA and CSS profile? So if you are a current junior, you can't do anything yet. The forms that you need will probably not be out until October 1st, right? So that is when you should be able to start it. Now, am I 100% sure that it will be October 1st? No, because for the last 2 years, the FAFSA has opened up in December or later, right? So we need to kind of figure out exactly when that's going to be. But in a normal year, the FAFSA and CSS, you should be able to start filling it out basically by October 1st. Okay. Says, thank you for this informative session. Thank you for being here, spending a little time with us, right? So here we go. And it says, can you share a ballpark price for the financial aid program at this point in time? Is there a discount if we're already in the egelloC family? So we do have a discount, right? As far as pricing, I don't like sharing that, right? Because it's kind of like I don't really like talking about money in front of a lot of people, right? But go ahead and sign up for that consultation. Our consultation is free, right? I'll tell you if I can help you. If I can, I'll tell you about our program. And then I'll also tell you about our money back guarantee. I'll tell you about any discounts that we're running. Now, just to kind of be fair to everyone, before you're signing up for your consultation, our consultation is based on time, right? So if you feel like, yeah, hey, we're ready to kind of like hear about this and see what our possibilities are, and we're also ready to sign up if it makes sense, then you should sign up for that consultation, right? Because the discount that we have is based on you signing up within 72 hours, right? Just how like we're trying to save you guys as much money as possible. We want you guys to sign up as soon as possible so that we can lock you in at your price and also make sure that we have enough time to strategize for your family. Sometimes I have families like even this year, I had families sign up like in November, right? And I'm like, well, you couldn't have signed up, 3, 4 months ago, right? When I was giving a bigger discount or doing this or doing that, right? And it's because I want to make sure I have enough time to look at your tax return to come up with the correct strategy. Okay. But go ahead and sign up for that consultation so that we can make sure to answer your questions. All right, so I don't see any other questions for today. So I am going to kind of end it here, right? Again, I'll leave the screen up just for a little bit so that you guys can go ahead, get the QR codes or get the phone number that you need. But if you're a class of 2026 and you haven't talked to me yet and you're part of our coaching program, my question is, what are you doing right now? Right? Because I'm here every week. I talk about it during office hours as well, right? We send out emails, right? You've gotten enough invitations, right? So go ahead and do that. If you're in our Facebook group or you're coming for the first time, welcome, right? And we do hope that we are providing information that is useful for all families out there, right? Even if you're going to do it by yourself. Okay. So again, the link is in the chat. It's also a QR code here, and you can text this phone number with money or college for more information about our programs. But I will be back here again next week with new kind of things, right? We're going to be talking about, I believe next week, we're going to be talking about kind of loans and kind of different things like that, right? But, right, I'll always try to bring something new for you guys to kind of learn about, okay? So thank you for spending a little time with me here today, right? The weather's getting warmer, so everyone, stay cool, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye-bye.